Yo, what's good, folks? What's good? Now, I've been giving up a lot of takes over the last couple weeks. Couple days, because I don't want to do always pro wrestling reviews. I wanted to do a review on the first HD episode of Monday Night Raw. First time they were actually going HD back in 2008, but probably going to be in a while because I'm bored. I also promised 2019 review. That was false promise. I'm a false prophet, and I don't really care. But let's just get into my takes on Becky Lynch. Listen, Becky Lynch, what over the last couple of years, has been one of the most talked about women's wrestlers over in WWE television for quite a while. Over recent history, we haven't had top drawing, at least considerable fan favorite woman in the WWE. So probably like back in the day, you had stands of AJ Lee, and of course every other normal human that would affected most women that are attractive to back in the day, more attractive women than AJ Lee. No disrespect to AJ Lee, she's a cute woman, but there's a difference to being cute and there's a difference to being gorgeous. So let's get that down everybody's mind hole, because we know, like, when you see 5 men, you ask them who they'd rather smash. It's going to be Eve Torres when she was still wrestling. I know she's a mother now. And AJ Lee. Probably you give it to like the 20-year-olds. And most of like the grown men, or at least some of the 20-year-olds, would be like, give me Eve Torres. So I saw, like, I think it's Paloma Productions. He's a wrestling tuber. And he's like, over most of the guys, he has skilled editing and pretty good production for most of his videos of his wrestling takes. And most of them can be a considerable like downfall of a wrestler, a take on the current state of wrestling. It's some of it in a couple of videos I agree with, but some, and this gets a minute like rebuttal off majority of wrestling YouTubers that complain about his takes or some of his content ideas to being like too baby focused. He's not trying to hurt anybody's feelings. He doesn't have a considerable personality, and his takes are pretty I don't know how to put it, smarky for some of his takes. And I'm not trying to rag on the dude. Do what you do, makes you money. Obviously you got more subs than me, so you're doing something right. So over what I've been seeing, he did a video recently on he's missing Becky Lynch, and I didn't watch the entire video. I didn't watch the entire video, to be honest. I didn't even watch the video. All I know is, like, dude, really? I think we would be doing fine without Becky Lynch. I think we would be doing better with Charlotte Flair. And you could be like, oh, you're being wrong. Becky Lynch is the better draw. She's more over. The fans really want her back. And when she gets out of, taking care of her kid, all that responsibility, and returns back in ring, it's all going to be work rate matches, her convoluted rip-off Drew McIntyre, I'm going to beat you because I can beat your promo, and the just generic character that's just a rip-off of what Ronda Rousey was doing and Steve Austin was doing. So let's just get this out the way, that Becky Lynch was the most overrated wrestler of the last couple of years. I'm not saying that Becky Lynch was terrible. I'm not saying that she isn't a skilled performer. She can obviously do pretty decent in-ring moves. She seems to be a nice woman, and I'm never going to take anything away from her personally. She seems like a hard-working woman, and she did well enough to make it this far up to the card that she was literally with her future fiance, like, literally main eventing a pay-per-view in a mixed tag team match for both their belts. Like, that's cool, but a bit overrated. And it sounds harsh, but I'd rather have Charlotte Flair than Becky Lynch. Like, we had her being the main event, probably the worst WrestleManias I've ever watched. 35 was trash. I don't care what anybody else says. And for God's sakes, man. She was in the cover of the worst video game, probably in professional wrestling history. And, well, I mean, video game history, not professional wrestling. And, God, she has, like, the most indecisive character depth of all time because the fans wanted her to turn heel. Completely backfired. And her crowd reaction depth just comes from when the hardcore fans directly know. And I get it. Like, Becky Lynch beforehand creatively wasn't in the top of the cards, and whenever she was either always the runner-up or just always being second-hand jobbing out or being an idiot whenever she was in a relationship, and somehow just somebody like turns heel on her. I get it. She just doesn't have the like mold. She doesn't have any decent promo that you can look back upon and feel that's interesting, other than like that time when she referenced Edge's neck injury, and I think that was like the 2000 episode of SmackDown. And that sounds rough, but it just came out of a semblance of like just pure rush shock value. And it didn't really etch out her character even more, because just under a year later she just turned babyface. And I understand it came out for being the man and all this stuff and the trash talk that she had. Why are you sparking feuds because of social media? And I understand Ronda Rousey was talking disrespectful about the company and about most of the fans. And, of course, you know, she's a top-of-the-road MMA chick, and she's literally one of the most, like, mainstream top stars, like, WWE could even sign over that recent time until she suffered her injury and then her child and all that jazz. But Becky Lynch just thinks that she's that high of a draw than Ronda Rousey, and that sounds silly. And people wanted to see her at WrestleMania 32, but they had to chart in Charlotte just for a reason to keep Charlotte up at the top of the card. Then you have her going this long-ass run, beating women like Lacey Evans, Charlotte Flair, Sasha Banks. I think she beat Nikki Cross once on a random episode of SmackDown. And then she comes around after beating Shayna Baszler out of nowhere, even though she was literally about to be in maternity leave like a month later. He immediately just strips it and gives it to obviously the better woman in the women's division. Even though Asuka has her own issues, obviously it's a language barrier, and of course her promos, and we don't know that much about her inconsistent character ability, but that just comes off creative. Asuka literally is a delight to watch. She's one of the better wrestlers in the division. Not only that, she's one of the funner characters. She's more exciting to watch. And at least she's fun. At least she has a defining personality out of most of what you see out of the division. Becky Lynch, they try to make her, like, they try to sell the point of her being, like, the overall, like, underachiever. And it's like, I have no, like, personal connection with Becky. Obviously, it's not because I'm Irish. Or a woman. I don't care about Becky Lynch. She's not that top of a draw out of every other woman. Only, like, hardcore fans wanted to see her turn heel anyway. Her matches were primarily forgettable unless with a better star. Like, even if hell, Ronda Rousey had a better match back at, like, some of the same year when she was doing stuff when she was Raw Women's Champion. Like, I at least remember some decent spots she did with Alexa Bliss, Nia Jax, making her feel like a freaking badass while, you know, still, you know, just a year into wrestling. And she was having a pretty good match with Sasha Banks, like, back in 2019. I praised the match and I praised the camera work and the decent wrestling she was doing. I don't care about Becky Lynch. And now she's like going to be legit top of the card for a while because she's actually married, about to be married to, Seth frickin' Rollins. And I'm not doing that to obviously get copyright strike. She's literally about to get married and is bearing the child of one of the top stars in the company. So she's probably not going to be gone for a while, even though it's a wrestling relationship. And thanks to active wrestlers in a relationship, it's probably not going to end well. So, okay. At least I have a life to live so I can see that crash and burn. So, yeah. That's probably my negatives on Becky Lynch. I don't want to rag on the woman. She did pretty well for herself to make it this far in the top of the card. She's been in a movie, I think a few now. She's not a decent worker. Bayley's obviously the weakest link of the four horsewomen women's division. Get it over yourself. It wasn't even a legit faction. It was just a friendship name. It was just a clique name. I don't know why you guys take it so seriously. It wasn't a rejuvenation of the women's division. I'm sorry. And I just don't think that she was that high as advertised, because she doesn't have that much defining character. She literally called herself a man, and she gets cucked up by everybody. Like Seth Rollins is a cucked, calling herself he's the man's man. Stone Cold Steve Austin's like, you're a badass, Becky. You're cool, Becky. And nobody knows the character of Becky Lynch except she acts sort of like a rebel, and you don't know the defining character flaw of that. And they try to stretch her off of TV. They gave her a goddamn pickup truck, for God's sakes, during one of the pandemic episodes of Raw. And nobody even knew what it was going to symbolize, except, oh my god, it's Becky Lynch on the truck. There's no badass motif into Becky Lynch other than when she got for real punched in the face by Nia Jax. And she had a crimson mask with a broken nose. I'm not trying to bury the chick. This is literally what she got to consider herself one of the top chicks on the women's division. When we have Bianca Belair, Asuka, Billie Kay and Peyton Royce, Lacey Evans, Charlotte Flair, Dana Brooke. Even though I rag on that chick sometimes, I'd rather have her because at least she looks athletic. Pretty good body figure. Not that much of an impressive wrestler, but at least can do some other stuff other than pro wrestling. Then we got Mandy Rose. Then we got Sonya Deville. That's a whole lot of stuff. Poor woman even got kidnapped. Well, a kidnapped attempt, but still. Paige, that sadly can't even wrestle anymore, and doesn't even want to deal with WWE. We had Zelina Vega until WWE got rid of her. What part of this could Becky Lynch even save in the standpoint? I'm just saying. And Alexa Bliss doing crazy stuff with the Fiend, giving at least some people to actually have a reason to watch Monday Night Raw. So what's the major standpoint for Becky Lynch? I'm being serious. We don't even know a defining character for her. What's she even that good at other than her wrestling ability? She could barely do promos. Her character trait is just defined on a rip-off Steve Austin. She's only on the top of the cards most of the time because of her relationship with Rollins. And she even thinks that male wrestling is the problem. And most of this is going to be supported because I know some female wrestling stands. Yes, there's female wrestling stands. These guys make fake profiles, fan profiles, just to stand on a female wrestler that they think is pretty good. Imagine if there was a Benoit stand profile, like, he didn't really do it. He didn't do it. It was David. Wait, what? And it's that bad. It's that bad. The fan base had gotten so toxic, they literally give you death threats just for having a differing opinion on who you think is a bad wrestler or not. It is bad, and this is why some of the fan base or the popularity of professional wrestling has declined over the last 15 years. And it sounds harsh to say, but I'm not wrong. And you can know this because most of your friends know, or probably some outsiders that are not used to my videos, at least not used to the topic that I'm talking about, that you probably haven't watched wrestling since you started in middle school or something. So, I'm not wrong in this standpoint. And women's division has overly had a snowflake mentality. And over what I've been saying, that Becky Lynch is kind of the seed over this, next to Bayley, Nia Jax, Naomi, Ember Moon, and most of these stands will defend because they think they're gonna be with them, and it's depressing. Because pro wrestlers used to be buff dudes, at least regular people, kids, teenagers could watch. And now it's fat neckbeard weirdos that come around complaining over for their mom to shut up while they're recording about the 50-minute Raw review. So, that's just my opinion on the matter. Hopefully you guys think differently. I hope Becky Lynch does well. I'm so happy that she has a child. And, I know that she's probably going to be in the top of the card when she comes back, even if she chooses to. So, that's all I gotta say. See, I can be nice. So, that's it coming from me. Hopefully you liked the video. And, hope you guys have a happy Cyber Monday.